Hey, welcome to our bonus teaching video from our first message from our God on Film Manly Men edition message series. And if you have not watched the message from the week of June 19th, please watch that first, or this won't make all that much sense. This is just some very important material that I didn't have time to fit into that service, and so I'm sharing it in this bonus video. I unashamedly believe men, and I believe the same thing for women, but we're focusing on men during this series. I believe men should learn what it means to be a man after God's own heart, a man who puts King Jesus above all else. I unashamedly believe boys and young men should learn to be men. I unashamedly believe it is God who shows us how to be men. I unashamedly do not believe what those who don't follow Jesus as their Lord and Savior tell us men should or should not be, women for that matter as well, whether they label themselves conservatives or liberals or anything in between. If they're not following Jesus, I do not believe what they have to say about who a man should be unless it matches up with what God says. You know, if they're not following Jesus, deception comes in all forms. It can often look very good. And a lot of what it means to be a man is revealed in the Lord of the Rings film series from Samwise's undying loyalty to Frodo. And you don't have to know who these men are. You don't have to know who these characters are. We're looking at the characteristics that God expects us to have, loyalty being one of them. Aragorn's unwillingness to be defined by his past, the unlikely friendship that develops between Legolas and Gimli. And I rarely do this. Most of the time I say I'm not recommending any of these films that we may be finding spiritual truths in. But in this particular case, I would recommend that you watch this film series with the idea, with the focus of learning from it how to be a man. The films are based on the writings of J.R.R. Tolkien. He wrote the Lord of the Rings trilogy. And although these books are not allegory, Tolkien made that very clear. Tolkien was a Christian, and so those values are displayed in his writings. In the message, I encouraged you to be a man that's honoring King Jesus, fully alive. You have to guard against deception. And I wasn't able to cover this particular topic in the message itself, but this is an area that deceives many and it hinders men from being men. If you become deceived by overvaluing the riches and the things this world offers, you're blowing the impact you could have as a man. You're blowing the impact you could have as a follower of Jesus. And Jesus warns us about this. Matthew 13, verse 22, and this is to men and women both, but they start worrying about the needs of this life and are deceived by the desire to get rich. So the message, this is the message about Jesus, gets choked out and they never produce anything. Money is good. Money's really, really good. When a man understands it's to be used as a tool to honor King Jesus. But when money becomes the focus, when stuff becomes the focus, you are not the man God desires you to be. You have got to get a grip on how to use money, how to spend money, how to save money, how to not be enslaved by money. We call it debt. And how to give money generously to be the man God desires you to be. And this is not about how much you make or how much you don't make. It's about how you use, how you treat what you've been entrusted with by God. And it's not about what you've done in the past with money. It's about what you're going to do in the future. And I've seen far too many men ruined or failing to reach their full potential for Jesus because of a lack of understanding when it comes to money and how to handle it. The Apostle Paul, when writing to Timothy, warns us in 1 Timothy chapter 6, verses 6 through 9, "Yet true godliness with contentment is itself great wealth." What's great wealth? Godliness with contentment. After all, we brought nothing with us when we came into the world, and so we can't take anything with us when we leave it. So if we have enough food and clothing, let us be content. But people who long to be rich fall into temptation and are trapped by many foolish and harmful desires that plunge them into ruin and destruction. I believe a man is to be educated concerning money as so not to be enslaved to it, but instead using it as a tool to bring glory to his king. And I believe the same thing for a woman. Don't be deceived. Worldly possessions, they're not the measure of a man, nor are they the measure of true wealth. In the message, I talk about the importance of reading, and just to encourage you to find time to read. Stop wasting your time watching or reading what is called news. I think it's great to read the New Era, the local newspaper, or wherever you're at, the local newspaper with local news, but the rest of it, it's just kind of a waste of time. Stop wasting your time and instead pick up a book or pick up a Bible and read. And a physical book actually builds up your brain to be stronger than reading on a digital screen. They've actually done studies on this because, of course, you can read digitally on a screen. But if you want to build up your brain power faster and to be stronger, they've found that reading a physical book does that far greater than reading on a screen does. Now, I said in the message, I would have some book recommendations, and if you need help getting your finances in order, I would recommend you read Dave Ramsey's Total Money Makeover. If you need the link for that or whatever, just shoot me an email at hello@holleychurch.org. But Dave Ramsey's book, Total Money Makeover, to start you on a good financial path. If you want some more in-depth financial reading, I can give you that as well. A good book about being a man from God's perspective is Wild at Heart by John Eldredge. This is the best book I've ever read about being a man from God's perspective. If you happen to have read this book, Life Mastery by Bob Shank is another great book. You can see here's my notes in here about that I got from it. And then if you're into fiction, you want to know some fiction books to read, my recommendations, and you might not like mine, but I'm going to recommend them anyway because you might. Any Western by Elmore Leonard. I wouldn't necessarily recommend his other books, but his Western books I would recommend. Louis L'Amour Western books I would recommend. Robert E. Howard, especially his Solomon Kane books, I would highly recommend. And again, just shoot me an email and I'll give you some book recommendations when it comes to history, when it comes to learning about the Bible, whatever it might be that you're interested in. My point is, with all of this, is protecting yourself from being deceived and being a man, reading, disciplining yourself to read is a very important aspect of that. Now, one more thought on reading. Reading out loud was how everyone used to read. It was a social activity, whether you were at home or in the tavern or wherever you were, people read out loud as a social activity. They're not sure why we started reading silently. It happened in the 1900s, a shift. But before then, everyone read out loud. And reading out loud with your kids is something I would recommend, no matter what their ages are. If they're older, I would have them take turns reading whatever book you're reading from. Maybe pick The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien or something like that. Might they complain about this, reading together as a family? Yes, but you're the parent. Far too many times I'm seeing parents reasoning with their kids, trying to reason with them to get them to do what they want. God didn't intend for you to be reasoning with your children. He intends for you to be training them. And so you're the parent. Does that take effort on your part to do? Of course it does. It's going to take effort on your part to raise up great kids. But make the effort and be the parent. My father-in-law and mother-in-law, they read out loud together. They read a devotional every morning. A devotional is a book based on the Bible, just thoughts from the Bible, verses from the Bible. And my father-in-law will read it out loud, and then they'll pray together. My dad, he reads to his wife, so that may work in your situation. I don't know. But reading is so important, again, to battle against deception. And if you struggle with reading, remember that almost all of these books they're available with audio version. Well, that's it. That's all my extra bonus teaching material. God bless.